A thief broke into our house, but he dropped his weapon when my little girl handed him her blanket and said, "You look cold." The sound that stops your heart. It's a cliché, but the sound of glass breaking at 3:17 a.m. doesn't sound like it does in the movies. It's not a dramatic crash followed by ominous silence. It's a sharp, violent intrusion into the safety of your home that injects pure adrenaline directly into your heart. I was awake before my eyes opened, my breath caught in my throat. Beside me, my wife, Sarah, shifted, mumbling a sleepy, "What was that?" Our house is old, it makes noises. The furnace groans, the floorboards settle, but this was different. This was the distinct crystalline shatter of the small window in our back door, followed by the heavy thud of a boot hitting the kitchen linoleum. Someone was inside. My first thought wasn't about my TV or my laptop. It was about the room down the hall, painted lavender, where my 5-year-old daughter, Lily, was sleeping peacefully. A primal, terrifying clarity washed over me. I slid out of bed, my movements silent and frantic. I grabbed the aluminum baseball bat I kept behind the nightstand, a relic from a rec league I hadn't played in years, now suddenly the only barrier between my family and an unknown threat. I motioned for Sarah to stay put, to grab her phone and hide. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the bat. I crept into the hallway, the darkness feeling heavier than usual, every shadow suddenly harboring a monster, descending into fear. The walk from my bedroom door to the top of the stairs felt like it took an hour. Every instinct screamed at me to run back into the bedroom, lock the door, and wait for the police. But the intruder was downstairs, between the exit and my daughter's room. I couldn't wait. I could hear him now. The sounds weren't stealthy like a professional cat burglar. They were clumsy, desperate noises. Drawers being yanked open too hard in the kitchen, loud footsteps thudding against the hardwood floors in the living room. It sounded frantic. I reached the top of the stairs and peered down into the gloom of the first floor. The only light came from a street lamp outside, casting long, warped rectangles of weak orange light across the living room carpet. I gripped the bat tighter, my knuckles turning white. I took the first step down, the old wood creaking under my weight. The noise below stopped instantly. Silence is infinitely worse than noise when you know someone is there. I held my breath, straining my ears, terrified of what would happen when I rounded the corner at the bottom of the stairs. The confrontation. I rounded the banister at the bottom of the stairs, and there he was. He wasn't a hulking brute in a ski mask. He was standing near our fireplace, illuminated by a sliver of moonlight cutting through the front window curtains. He looked incredibly young, maybe early 20s. He was skinny, almost gaunt, dressed in a filthy, oversized gray hoodie and dark jeans that were soaked through at the cuffs. He was vibrating with nervous energy, his head snapping back and forth like a trapped animal. In his right hand, he gripped a tire iron. It wasn't a gun, thank God, but it was a menacing piece of heavy rusted metal that could easily kill me if he swung it hard enough. He saw me at the same moment I saw him. He froze, raising the tire iron defensively. His eyes were wide, manic, and rimmed with red. I realized with a jolt of horror that he was terrified too, which makes a desperate person infinitely more dangerous. My mouth was completely dry. "Get out," I managed to choke out. My voice sounded pathetic, thin, and reedy, nothing like the commanding boom I had intended. I raised the bat slightly, trying to look imposing despite the fact that my knees were knocking together in my pajama pants. The standoff. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, locked in a terrifying tableau. The air in the living room was freezing. He must have left the back door wide open to the winter night. He was shivering violently, his teeth actually chattering, though whether it was from the cold or adrenaline, I couldn't tell. I said, "Get out," I tried again, my voice a little stronger this time. "The police are on their way." They weren't yet, Sarah was still dialing, but he didn't know that. His eyes darted toward the kitchen door, his escape route, then back to me and the bat. He took a shaky step backward, gripping the tire iron tighter until his knuckles turned white. "Don't move, man," he rasped. His voice was scratchy, like he hadn't used it in days. Just stay back." He looked wildly around the room, his gaze landing on my wife's purse sitting on the coffee table. He took a step toward it. I took a step forward, raising the bat higher. It was a dangerous dance, a calculation of risk versus property. He snarled, a cornered animal sound, and raised the iron higher. I braced myself for the rush, for the violence, sickeningly aware that I might lose this fight, and what that would mean for Sarah and Lily upstairs. The nightmare scenario. Then the worst thing imaginable happened. Above me, the floorboards squeaked. The sound was light, rhythmic, pat, 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 the sound of small, bare feet on wood. My heart stopped completely. I didn't dare take my eyes off the man with the tire iron, but I could hear her. Lily was awake. The noise had disturbed her. She was coming downstairs to find out why Daddy was yelling. "Lily, go back upstairs," I shouted, desperation cracking my voice. The intruder's head snapped toward the staircase behind me. His eyes widened even further. I saw a flicker of something new in his expression, panic, confusion, superseding the aggression. "Daddy," her little voice drifted down, sleepy and confused. I saw her peripheral vision as she rounded the corner of the stairs. She was wearing her fuzzy pink pajamas with the cartoon bears on them, her hair a messy halo of sleep. She was clutching her security blanket, a tattered yellow thing she'd had since birth, dragging it on the floor behind her. She rubbed her eyes with one tiny fist, blinking into the dim light of the living room, trying to process the scene before her. Her father holding a baseball bat, facing a strange, dirty man holding a metal bar. The innocent approach. I moved to put myself between her and the man, but Lily is fast, and she operates on a logic entirely her own. She didn't run to me. She didn't scream. She just looked at the stranger. She walked right past me. "Lily, no," I lunged, but I was too slow to grab her without terrifying her further. I froze, bat hovering, terrified that any sudden movement from me would trigger a violent reaction from him. Lily stopped about 3 feet away from the intruder. She looked up at him. He looked down at her, completely bewildered. The tire iron wavered in his grip. He looked like he'd just been confronted by a ghost. My daughter tilted her head. In the freezing draft coming from the kitchen, the man was shaking so hard his whole body vibrated. "You're shaking," Lily said softly in the quiet room. It wasn't an accusation. It was just a simple observation from a 5-year-old. The man didn't speak. He just stared at this tiny creature in pink pajamas who wasn't afraid of him. "The gift." Lily looked down at her cherished yellow blanket, the object that protected her from thunderstorms and imaginary monsters under the bed. Then, without a moment's hesitation, she held it out to the strange man with the metal bar. "Here," she said, her voice clear and kind. "You look cold." Time seemed to fracture. I watched the man's face. The manic energy, the drug-fueled desperation, the cornered animal aggression, it all just seemed to evaporate. His face crumbled. It wasn't a subtle change. It was a collapse of his entire persona. His eyes welled up instantly, tears cutting clean tracks through the grime on his cheeks. He stared at the yellow blanket being offered to him by a child he had broken in to rob. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His hand, the one holding the tire iron, went slack. The heavy metal bar slipped from his fingers and hit the carpet with a dull, heavy thud that sounded louder than a gunshot in the silence. He didn't seem to notice he dropped it. He slowly reached out with a trembling hand and took the blanket from Lily. He held it like it was made of spun glass. The collapse. The moment his hands touched that soft, worn cotton, the fight went out of him completely. His knees buckled. He didn't fall. He just sort of sank down onto the living room rug, pulling the tiny blanket against his chest, burying his face in it. He started to sob. It was a guttural, ugly sound, the sound of someone who hasn't just reached the end of their rope but fell off it a long time ago. He sat there on my floor, rocking slightly, clutching my daughter's security blanket, crying uncontrollably. Lily, unintimidated by his emotions, just took a step closer and patted him awkwardly on the shoulder, the way Sarah pats her when she scrapes her knee. "It's okay," she whispered. I lowered the bat. The threat was gone. I wasn't looking at a monster anymore. I was looking at a kid, a broken, freezing, starving kid, who had just been completely undone by an act of pure, instinctive kindness he probably hadn't experienced in years. I moved then, quickly closing the distance, scooping Lily up into my arms and pulling her tight against my chest. She squirmed a little. "Daddy, he was sad," she explained into my shoulder. The reality of the situation. Sarah must have finished the call, because blue and red lights suddenly splashed across the living room walls, followed seconds later by the pounding on the front door. "Police, open up." The noise startled the intruder, but he didn't try to run. He just stayed on the floor, clutching the blanket. I walked to the door, still holding Lily, and let the officers in. They rushed in, guns drawn, adrenaline high. They saw me with the bat on the floor, Lily in my arms, and the suspect sitting on the rug crying into a child's blanket. The tension in the room dissipated into confusion. They handcuffed him without incident. He didn't resist at all. As they pulled him to his feet, he looked small and frail between the two burly officers. He looked over his shoulder at me and then down at Lily. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice raw. "I'm so sorry, I was freezing. I haven't eaten in 3 days. I didn't mean to scare her." One of the officers gently tried to take the yellow blanket from him as they let him out. He gripped it tight for a second, a look of panic returning, before slowly relinquishing it. The officer handed it back to Lily. The eyes of a child. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. The police took our statements, the window was boarded up, and the silence returned, but the peace didn't. Sarah made coffee that we were too wired to drink. We sat on the couch, watching Lily sleep between us. She had fallen back asleep instantly, clutching her blanket again, completely untraumatized by the event. I kept replaying the moment over and over in my head. I had been ready for violence. I had met his fear with my own fear, his makeshift weapon with my makeshift weapon. I saw a threat to be neutralized. I saw a thief, a criminal. My 5-year-old daughter walked into that room and didn't see any of those labels. She didn't know what a junkie looked like. She didn't understand the concept of a home invasion. She just saw a human being who was shaking. She saw a need, and she offered the only thing she had to give. We teach our children to be wary of strangers to protect themselves, and we must. But that night, my daughter taught me something infinitely more valuable. She taught me that sometimes, the most powerful weapon against darkness isn't force, or anger, or a baseball bat. Sometimes the only thing that can truly disarm a terrified, desperate soul is a moment of unexpected, undeserved grace. She saw the human beneath the hoodie, and because she did, we were all saved.